Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday, May 28, 6 p.m. Town of Grand Rapids joint meeting with our Plan Commission and possibly some visitors from the village of Point Edwards. I want to welcome everybody. I want to welcome especially Nancy Church from UW Extension, Wood County Development Educator. We're glad to have you here. The meeting this evening is to be a discussion on what it would take to become a solar-ready community. I've asked Nancy to come on and put a little presentation on for us. And if you are ready, Nance?
Sure, I'm ready.
Turn it over to you.
Okay.
If any of the front row wants to move to be a little visible to the other screens, you may.
Well, thank you for having me here this evening. I have been working with the county and some of the other municipalities, but mostly this process was initiated through the executive committee at the county level to look into what it means to become a solar-ready community. And before I get into what we've learned about that, I wanted to give you a little background about why we're even talking about this. So, currently in Wisconsin, there's roughly 100 megawatts of solar that is installed. And that's everybody's rooftops and the pedestal solar that you see. And all of that combined totals 100 megawatts. So that means it can power roughly 17,000 homes at this point. But we're entering a new era where larger utility scale solar is coming into play. So we're going to talk about both what a town needs to think about or a municipality needs to think about in terms of those individual rooftop type of utility situations. They're called utilities, but when they're on your house, you don't think of a utility. Anyway, so individual home rooftops and the larger scale. We'll talk about both of those. Currently, there is some economic benefits happening related to solar in Wisconsin, but there's a lot more potential that could happen. And there's roughly 200 companies that are involved with solar throughout the state and 3,000 jobs, and it's on the uptick. So it's kind of leveling off in certain states in the United States, but Wisconsin continues to grow. And in part that's because we're actually a little bit behind. So I wanted to include some photos on this slide from Mid-State Technical College because we're well situated to train the future generation of solar workers, both in installation and design and all kinds of things. The photos are on the right are of larger scale systems. But they're actually going to be even larger scale than what we're looking at in some situations. Okay, so this is what solar PV looks like. Photovoltaic means these systems are generating energy, electricity, and not just heat. So this is what it looks like. It's a smattering across the state. Even though we get pretty far north, we get snow and that sort of thing, you can still utilize solar. In fact, some communities are doing group buys where there's a discount if lots of people make a purchase all at one time, and Bayfield broke the record last year, so they're doing really well all the way up there. And we'll just zip through these. These are wind generators, but we're going to focus on solar this evening. So that's all wind and solar thermal and solar photovoltaic and biogas. So the utility scale systems that are being proposed and looked into are on the order of all of those systems combined. So they're 100 megawatt plus solar farms that are being proposed. We recently, our Public Service Commission for the state recently approved the largest solar farm in the Midwest. It's in the southwestern part of the state, and it's right around 300 megawatts. So we're at 100 now, and one farm alone is bumping it to 300. And another one was approved at the same time near the former nuclear power plant over by Point Beach, by Two Rivers. And that one is 150 megawatts. So a little bit smaller, but still doubles what we have all told for solar right now. And there's more proposed, as you can see on this map. The blue triangle, whoop, see if we can go back here. Let's see if I can move this without, here we go. So this blue triangle up in Marathon County is a 300 megawatt wind farm. And then there's various other sized farms that are proposed. You'll see that most of the farms are located in the southern part of the state, and that's just because it's most beneficial to have them near large populations. So the fact that they're not proposed in the north is not limitations by light, because Canada has a lot proposed. It's just that we have smaller populations up there, and so the companies coming in or the utilities that are putting these in prefer to go where transmission is easiest, low-hanging fruit. There are far more of these in Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan, and Illinois at this point. We're a little bit behind. So about 4,700 megawatts are being seriously looked at. That's really a lot compared to what we have. In general, the contract period for these systems is 25 years. The property taxes get restructured from whatever they're currently zoned. It becomes temporarily utility. And so in lieu of property taxes, there's a shared revenue arrangement through the Department of Revenue. So annually for those each of those 25 years, the county would receive $2,333 per megawatt, and a town would receive $1,667 per megawatt each year for that 25 years. And then property owners, of course, get payments, and that's negotiated if it's a third-party company installing it. So in the case of the system going in the southwest part of the state, last I looked on their pre-approvals, their environmental assessment document, there were about 26 property owners that were participating in that. So it's not necessarily a contiguous situation. Sometimes they're set up where they're almost like daisy wheels that are connected to one another. And they need to be located near high capacity transmission lines or transmission lines that can be upgraded at a reasonable cost, especially since we're low-hanging fruit again, where we really don't, we're just getting going in the state. So there are a number of reasons why this is occurring. In part, a lot of speakers that I've heard in the state talk about the $19 billion that we export annually for energy. So we have hydropower we generate, but beyond that, for the most part, we're exporting it for coal and natural gas and all kinds of other things to other people. So there is an independence piece to this, and there are a whole litany of other reasons, and I can share those with you if you are interested in that aspect of that. So this is an example of a ground mount, larger scale system. And part of what is typically occurring, we don't have rules in this state as to what needs to be planted or not planted below these larger scale systems, but Minnesota does and other places do. And for the most part, from what I understand, the third-party companies are more than willing to talk to the local municipalities. And if you say, we want vegetation for, there's anything from grazing that occurs, although they said no goats, because goats jump on them and chew on them and all kinds of things. But North Carolina, there's a lot of sheep grazing that goes on. These things have to be fenced, of course, because they're high voltage electricity. So it lends itself readily to grazing because it's contained. Otherwise, pollinator plants are grown sometimes to enhance bees and pollinating creatures that benefit nearby agriculture, or sometimes just native plants for water quality protection and habitat. So that can vary. So the program's going for local governments. The county here started working with an organization called SoulSmart. And that is a program that's funded through the U.S. Department of Energy. And I guess their main goals really are to reduce unforeseen barriers that may be in your ordinances, in your permitting process. So it gives you a checklist and some guidance to clean that up a little bit. And it is not an onerous process necessarily. It's thinking about setbacks for rooftops, or if it's larger scale, setbacks from the property lines, and those sorts of recommendations that your town might want to mull over and think about. So that even if a property owner wants a small rooftop solar system, that it's easy for them to obtain. So I had a friend that recently purchased one, and she lives in the village of Plover, and she said she had to go to a meeting at night to talk about it. And she's like, did you have to go to a meeting? I live in town of Lanark. I'm like, no, they just, they had things cleaned up so that it wasn't in as a conditional use, it was in as an acceptable use in many of the categories. You may want a conditional use in depending on which zoning district you're talking about, but that's for you to wrestle with. The other piece of SoulSmart is to provide information for residents. If your community chooses to go the SoulSmart route, the county has already prepared a website that has links to a variety of renewable and energy efficiency related information, whether it's incentive programs or rules, or for more information. I pulled out everything I could find from the utilities that service Wood County. So there's all kinds of links. And from what I understand, if your website linked to that website, you could get some of your SoulSmart points, but by the efforts that the county has already put forth. The other piece of participating with SoulSmart is it makes you eligible to have up to 5 sites assessed economically and technically by the National Renewable Energy Lab that's outside of Denver, Colorado. So what they did at the county, the facilities manager thought about which buildings might have roofs that would be good for the next 25 years and what types of park sites. from my understanding, the county doesn't have landfills, but this would be a possibility to have that looked at and say, is it technically feasible to utilize this land that we can't use for much else for solar? And so they look at your energy bills, and they look at the utilities programs and any of the state and federal incentive programs, and they put it all together. And they'll look at ground mount or roof mount or over parking lots, all different options, and then give you feedback on what would it cost, how long would it take you to pay back, all that. So you could get up to 5 assessments at this point. And then I don't think our county's looking into it, but I've talked with colleagues from Portage and Marathon County, and they are trying to understand how solar could be embedded in TIF districts, so I'm not real familiar with TIF districts, but my understanding through them is that TIF will pay for some utility, and so this would be a way to put solar in, and eventually, in those cases, the counties would have the systems and be generating some income over the long run. Okay, so SolSmart has 3 different levels. There's a bronze, a silver, and a gold. The county is shooting for gold, and we are pretty close to achieving that. So I only brought a few of the applications because I'm assuming not all of you want to pour through that. But what it entails is there's some prerequisites, and that is basically going through your ordinances. It's making a goal in a plan for either CO2 reduction or use of renewables over X period of time, whatever that is. And the chairperson has to write a letter, and it needs to be posted on the website or something publicly that they are endorsing this process and whatnot. And then when it says 60 points for bronze, you would be going through this application, and there's a variety of categories. They call them scorecards, but it's almost like a menu of options. So they're related to permitting, planning and zoning regulations, inspection, construction codes, solar rights. The state already has solar rights, so I don't know that we can get points for that or not. Utility engagement, so that would be contacting your local utilities, understanding what their goals are, and having a discussion over whether there could be a partnership or not. The community engagement is the web page, and if you held informational meetings and that sort of thing. And then there's a market development and finance piece. I haven't really delved into that part of it that much. So this is a SolSmart printout, I guess, or a copy of some of their materials, so it's straight from them. So the comp plans would describe some solar resources, encourage development, have solar goals, I guess, and then a lot of the other items that we've already talked about. So one of the examples I can give you is there's going to be another group buy in central Wisconsin. So maybe your municipality would say, we'll host one, and you would help disseminate information about a meeting to talk about the solar group buy for your residents or something like that. And that would help you work towards points. Other ways we've achieved points, SolSmart provides really good webinars on how to incorporate this into planning and zoning and different aspects of it. things about permitting processes. And so if you have plan commissioners or others listening to those webinars and then documenting it, then you get points. So this is a picture of our website. Again, there's energy efficiency route you can take or information about solar and wind energy. It's accessible from the main page. And Jason and I are the contacts about this Soul Smart initiative. And that's pretty much what I have up front for you. Happy to take questions or converse or whatever your wishes are. I know you've looked into it a little bit, so I don't know if you want to say a few words about what you've learned.
Yeah, when this first started here, I did ask Nick to get involved with it a little bit so that we are not going into this totally blind and looking at it. And he had the luxury of listening to the 1.5 hour webinar that I did and Patty did when she had the time, and actually Jason sat in and listened to it too. So, I mean, we've looked into it. We want to talk in generalities. Is this good for the community? Is it something that we should be considering doing? And, you know, there is some discussion on, do we have some potential sites that might fit? And we need to talk those things over. The reason we're getting at it now, obviously, because the county's going on it, and we're in the process of, with the Planning Commission, updating our comprehensive plan. So this is a good time, if we're going to do something with this, to bring it in, because we could roll that into our meetings that we're doing with the comp plan that you guys are involved in doing. So what kind of questions are there from anybody, or anybody for that matter from the audience?
Well, I always have questions.
Sure.
One of my first questions was the solar rights, and you said the state has the solar rights. What is solar rights as far as that?
It's a state statute, and there's a link to it on the website.
Okay.
But in a nutshell, it says that no municipality can prevent, like completely say, no solar here.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Or no wind here.
All right. And then how many acres does it take to have the 100 megawatt farm? Because you had based on, 17,000 homes, and that I was just trying to get
yeah, I know.
A feel of how large is that?
Yeah, so I haven't seen any documentation exactly how it is, because it seems like it's dependent on design and then how contiguous or not it is, right?
Okay.
So I think all told, the 300 megawatt farm is around 2,000 acres.
Wow.
But it's across 26 properties, so it's this daisy chain thing, according to what I've read. And they have to avoid all environmental constraints, just like any other building. So when I was reading their environmental impact statement, I just wanted to understand a little more about what's all involved. They were avoiding wetlands, and they had some areas that weren't suitable, so I don't think it's 2,000 total acres of panels, but it's a lot. It's a change on the horizon that, either you're looking at a nuclear power plant or a coal-fired power plant, or, yeah.
And one other thing that could change the amount of area used is whatever height limitations you're allowing it, whether you got a one panel array or a multiple or a quadruple or whatever, would dictate to how much land would be taken. But if you're starting to stack them, then you're making them farther apart too, so because otherwise you get some blockage of it. So, Bill, you had a question?
Yeah. I think the Towns Association has to really look at this, because we have extraterritorial zoning, which the city can come out here 3 miles. We can have annexation. You could have a solar farm there, and a year later, there's no restriction why the city couldn't annex that. Because of the incentive of they're getting money for vacant land, really. And I don't think it's been looked into good. I think this is great for cities. I think it's great for villages because they can go annex from us and take up those 40 acres and 50 acres. And my understanding is there's a 2,000 acre farm in Saratoga looking at one of these. No, a solar farm. Is that right, Tom?
I haven't heard.
Oh, I'm surprised.
Why would you be surprised?
I'm surprised you haven't heard.
No, I don't talk to everybody, and I don't.
I've heard it many times. I've heard it at the county level too, that the Waisakis are thinking over 2,000 acre solar farm.
In terms of annexation, I haven't come across those details. There's the Wisconsin County Association about 2-3 months ago dedicated an entire issue of their monthly magazine to renewables. So they may have touched on that.
No, they didn't.
I have not seen that though. So that would be something that your town would.
You have anything to say about the 2,000 acres?
I was invited to talk about Soul Smart here, so I really don't
So that should tell
have
you there is one.
information.
Well, there may be, Bill. I said, nobody has brought it to me and said, hey, this is what we're on. Brian?
What is the difference with us getting solar ready or joining the program versus the county doing it?
Yeah, so Portage County is also going through Soul Smart. There's about 5 counties that I'm aware of in central Wisconsin that are pursuing this. And in Portage County, they have county zoning. And so they're able to, their planning and zoning people are going through their ordinances and adding solar and wind to conditional use and all of that. And because we don't have that in this county, we can't offer that. So each municipality needs to do that. That being said, I think planning and zoning is developing a permitting list, so that's something you could take. Or Wisconsin Rapids, the city, is already Soul Smart Gold, so they have some of those materials. You could do it without going through the Soul Smart process, but you would not be able to utilize that NREL option at no additional charge at this point. So we kind of cover you. We've tried to do as much as we possibly can to make it easier on municipalities, but just because of the lack of countywide zoning, we can't do it all for you.
It's not, you're not a one-shop for us. One-stop shop. Anything on this side, Jason or Jeff?
I have a general question.
Go ahead.
You had mentioned PSC involvement, but you were talking, I believe on that slide, from the standpoint of a large scale.
Yeah.
It would make sense, medium, large, maybe small scale to an extent has PSC involvement. Where is their involvement? Where does that stop? Do they have involvement, for example, with roof-mounted systems?
No. It's, to my knowledge, it's greater than 100 megawatts is when they actually take the helm and they have the authority to not involve municipalities, towns at that level. They could make all the decisions to be made, but in talking to the planning and zoning people down at the Iowa County 300 megawatt farm, that third party organization or company was more than happy to talk with the towns to see if they could meet their needs, because this is a new thing and they're trying to be good neighbors or whatever. They don't want to ruffle feathers if they can. So if your town had, even if it was over 100 megawatts and your town said, well, you know, we're set up and we would like this and this, can you consider this or work with us? It sounds like they're willing to do so, although not required.
And 100 megawatts would certainly be large scale, looking at the definition.
Yeah, so your rooftop, no, that should be really smooth, you know, if your permitting processes and your ordinances are cleaned up, that should be really smooth for a landowner to know when they can and can't have that kind of a setup. And what setbacks would be if they have a pedestal system and all of that.
The reason I ask is if we were to pursue this and look at it, changing our ordinances in some way, where that requirement would come in, it sounds like large scale. If we're accounting for those things, where would we have those developments, industrial, commercial, manufacturing, those kind of things? And is a conditional use permit, you know, what oversight is there? Is it
Right.
just town or is there PSC oversight? It sounds like with large scale only. Okay, thank you.
Andrew and then Doug Mahan.
Damage at all in these things, I mean, you see they're obviously subject to the elements, the hail, the wind, the rain, all that kind of thing like that. Has there been problems in communities that have the larger scale farms or even the individual houses that have applied them that have come across issues with that?
Well, certainly places like Puerto Rico. I don't know about the large scale. I know a lot of people in central Wisconsin that have had them for decades and decades, and they've made it through hail. I would imagine that there are occasions when either they get yanked up, you know,
Yeah.
in
They're
heavy
costly to
winds
start
or-
with, I assume, right?
Pardon?
They're costly to start with, I assume, so replacement costs would be rather high.
No, well, the cost of panels themselves is plummeting. And that is one of the, remember I said there were many reasons why these are going in. They're absolutely, the demand worldwide is so high that the cost is just drastically falling. So to give you an example from an individual standpoint, we had an estimate for our barn roof probably, I want to say 10 or 15 years ago. And it was about 3 times what it cost to put on 2 years ago. And then there are, currently there's federal incentive programs, 30% tax incentives, but that's declining. So it's set up to start declining in upcoming years.
Okay.
And then Focus on Energy has incentives too, but I think that you would need to depend on warranty for repairs or replacements.
Well, obviously, I think that if you were leasing it, the parcel to somebody, and they put their own
Yeah.
system on, it would be their
It's their
nickel is
thing.
what is, and if we were able to have something, maybe we were just collecting our yearly stipend or whatever it is, if we were so lucky. Doug, you had a question?
Yeah, actually, I can address both those last ones if you allow me. The panels are pretty much indestructible. They'll actually protect the roof if you put them on a roof placement. They'll actually act as a protectant for your roof, and they are probably the cheapest part of the installation. The panels are
Yep.
ridiculously cheap. Technologies are coming by the day, basically. The materials they're using are getting more advanced, and so there's no worries that way. Hail is, that's like they don't even worry about hail on these things anymore. And back to the PSC thing for a minute, I know there was a question on the PSC. Basically, to make it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, but the PSC involvement is basically, the only thing that the PSC is involved in this is they mirror their same regulations for a coal-fired power plant or a nuclear power plant. Any major producer of electricity, that's where the PSC comes in. So when you have these big megawatt, 100 megawatt operations, they're basically power plants. And so the PSC has regulatory authority in that situation. And that's all. It wouldn't be like they're going to come in and tell you and your town you can't do it or something like that. They're going to regulate the facility as a power plant, for lack of a better term.
But they do also have authority, just like a coal-fired power plant, if they decided they wanted one in Grand Rapids, you have say
you're right,
about
yeah.
that.
Initially, yeah.
Tom, do you have a question?
Yeah, the majority of these that are installed already, are those on public or private land?
You mean that map with all the...
Right.
They are both, but the majority are individuals that want to have them on their land.
So they're locking up a contract for 25 years.
No, if you own your own
25-year
individual,
contract.
that's for the large scale.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at, the large scale that you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so they're, the two that came into Wisconsin that were permitted thus far are third party, which means they're owned by a company. But Portage County or City of Stevens Point just put a 183 megawatt system in on their wastewater treatment land. So it's a mix, depends who owns it.
It'd be like getting a cell tower.
I mean, 183 kilowatt, not megawatt.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's pretty big.
But you're leasing that land to Cellcom or whoever for that tower.
Right,
So if it's a private citizen, they're locking that up for 25-year contract?
yes. So it's similar, talking to the planning and zoning people down in Iowa County, they suggested that some of the land that's in the mix was owned or is owned by a few century farms, and they're nervous about their future, so they put part of their land into this situation so they have a known stream of income, and they're farming the other part. Others are retirees that don't have young farmers coming along. I guess the important thing to know is that after 25 years, if both parties want to break, not pursue a longer agreement, those pedestals can be removed. And if you go on the public service site, they have to have a reclamation plan like anybody else, and that property can go back into agriculture or whatever after that, whatever your underlying zoning is,
Okay.
and what's allowed in that underlying zoning.
I have a friend that has panels all over their house,
Yeah,
and they're about 40 years old.
uh-huh.
He'll never see the return on investment.
I don't know about that.
I spoke to him, and I said, you have solar? He said, yes. He said, I'll never see the return on my investment as long as I'm alive.
Oh, well, I don't know what he paid for his. Our return on investment on our barn was 5 years.
His whole,
And that was our break even, so every year after that, we actually don't pay power bills, maybe a little bit in the winter time, but overall, we don't pay power. While I'm working and not using electricity, I'm selling it to WPS, so.
What happens during that 25 years if ownership changes or something happens with the property? Are you locked, is it similar to managed forest land where you have to pay a penalty to get out of it, or how does that work within that 25
I
years?
think
Say grandpa passes away and
Right. Now
what
it goes into an
happens?
estate.
I would
something like
assume
that.
it's a business and it's gonna stay with that property. I don't know for sure, but this is a utility.
Would they possibly be getting an easement onto that piece with that lease, if that's what it is? Was that the term you would use, Dave?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have not seen the contracts
think
with
so.
the
Something like
property
that will get
owners.
recorded with them.
I'm sure.
You're kind of limited on what you can do in your stuff.
For 25 years, yep.
And that's-
Yep,
I've only read, what's online, and it sounds kind of like a cell tower to me. Where you're granting use of that chunk of your land for, whatever their access needs are.
The question I got is, recently we heard about the Watoma area down by the airport. Is that all airport property, or is that surrounding properties, private or personal? Do you know anything about that?
from, all I read was what was in the paper, and it sounded like it was all airport property. I know, that was quite the deal. That situation was the energy company approaching the city and saying, we would like to install this because we're trying to meet our renewable energy goals. And can we use your property? That's quite the bargain.
And pay you some money.
Yeah, exactly.
So a hypothetical here would be Water and Light using their well land. That would make sense.
Yep.
They're,
how would-
obviously, what are they, got 40, 60 acres over there by area
Rock
drive?
and 64.
64?
Yeah, I mean, they've got, I don't know how many hundreds, but I mean, over 100,
Acres that
say
they
easily. But yeah, I wonder how, like, so how would that work? Because I mean, we really don't have any.
Well,
Collect any revenue off of that.
no.
So would we get, same way with the county owning this where we pump out Lake Wazeecha,
Oh, yeah,
the county owning that, that they put that in there. There probably would be no incentive to the town because it's tax-free for them now. It's off the rolls. Oh. And can you can't have a dog park underneath it? I mean, you had goats in there,
Yeah.
and you was talking about the fence. The fence was to keep the goats in or people out?
both.
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 Keep the goats.
So you don't ever
when they're
want
mowing-
people in
Or they're
there.
eating their grass for you.
So you don't ever
It's
want
high
people in there?
voltage, but most of that goes to, I don't know, if your municipality, let's say, you put it on your landfill and you did it, I don't know if it's up to you or what those rules are. You'd have to check with public service to see what they say about that. And whether that fencing is their requirement or if it's for your protection. That's a good question. That'd be kind of a fun idea. I have one more question.
Go ahead, Patty.
Was there any studies in regards to health hazards in having these, like the high voltage and the solar panels? Is there any health hazards associated with this?
So, yeah, I'm not an expert on the voltage and free voltage. From what I understand, in the past, there were free voltage issues, but the way the panels are configured now in the inverter and transmission, that's less of an issue. It's
I think,
certainly
Bill, you
less
must know
of
what
an
the output
issue
of one panel is,
from
don't you?
air quality
Yeah, we
standpoint
have
than like
24
the
panels and we put
Weston
out 7.
7 watts.
plant.
No, kilowatts.
You know,
Kilowatts.
they-
Seven
you're getting
kilowatts.
mercury, you're getting
Right, got a 7 kilowatt
particulates.
inverter.
So one
Depends.
But see, that's one panel, and it's going to a collector, basically, if you want to say electric collector. It's getting multiplied as it comes in, so one panel itself isn't that high on any wattage or anything, I assume.
I don't think Patty's referring to a house, you're referring to big transmission lines coming into these big megawatters, aren't you? Yeah.
Is that why we're low hanging fruit, because we have these big transmission lines going?
No, we just have none of this going on. Right now, WPS, my power company, gets almost all of its renewables from Iowa because Iowa made it easier for them to come in there and we were more difficult.
I mean, that's part of the reason why they're building all those transmission lines is because they're trying to bring that power over from Iowa and Minnesota.
So it's, these big farms, 2,000 acres, 5,000 acres, are they replacing coal-fired plants? Is that
That's-
kind of what they're trying to do?
That is the eventual plan,
Good.
is as coal-fired power plants
Shut down.
have to be retired, instead of going with a new coal-fired, the energy companies are going towards renewables. It's a slow process, it's not an overnight thing. You know, we're just right at the cusp of all of this in this state.
Well, I know the transmission line that goes through the town now is in the process of next winter being updated. Not sure if they're doing pole replacements or whatever, but we had preliminary notices that they were, work was going to be done in the area starting next winter, I believe. So, but it's nothing like anything else. They just 2 years ago they replaced another
Yeah.
section of the line that was from around 80th Street.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's maintenance more than anything. Maybe they're suffering the same issue that a lot of the power poles that are wooden around here is the bugs like to get into them and go from there.
Just one more thing, they said that there would never be the renewable on it and stuff like that. You never live long enough to get your money back, but still it's the right thing to do. I mean, when I sit at home and see that arrow on my meter going back to water and light, hey, that's good.
I understand.
I'm maybe not going to ever recover what I paid for it, but it's the right thing to do.
Well, in this, it looks like the preliminary estimates for some of the county buildings range from, and they did not incorporate a larger incentive program that the county would be eligible for, but it was ranged between 10 and 17-year payback. So that means you've recovered all your money and all your energy moving forward from there is free. So it's not this lifetime recovery thing at all. And in part, a big part of the replacement of coal-fired power plants when they become obsolete, nuclear power plants, is because the cost is plummeting, and it is projected in the next 2 to 5 years to be like unbeatable in terms of generation per kilowatt hour. The cost that it takes to create that energy is going to be so much less with renewables. Because there's worldwide demand, so it's all big scale stuff now.
And what was about the price of your barn project, or say like an average, you know, if you want to put them on your garage?
What are you asking? How
What
much
would the
they cost?
cost of the project be?
It was, well, mine is roughly 5 kilowatt hours, and we paid, after incentives, we paid between 3,000 and 4,000 for that.
I just put 6 kilowatts on my house last fall, and it cost $11,000, and I got $5,500 back in rebates and incentive and tax incentives.
So that's the whole,
I paid $5,500.
that's the whole
My
install?
ROI is about 8.5 years.
Basically, they're plug and play, so we didn't have power to our barns, so ours, you know, had to be trenched, brought to the house, the inverter installed. But on the roof, they put framework up, it's plug and play, so they're not up welding like they used to do, and with electricians up there, they have installers, and it was less than a half-day job, so it's fast. And that was your big cost in install.
It seems like it'd be worthwhile to at least look at our,
Well, that's the reason why I asked for it, is to see if this is worthwhile to consider on and pushing. And I guess, is there any more questions before we go to Tom?
One final question. I was researching this on the internet, and I read an article on there that said that these panels themselves cannot be recycled as they're hazardous material. What do you do with the panels when they break down?
I thought that the PSC document that I read for the Badger Hollow, which is the 300 megawatt, it said that everything needed to be recycled.
I said, what I read was it can't be recycled because they're hazardous material.
Well, hazardous material can be recycled. It has
Do
to
I
be done in a
understand?
proper facility.
Yeah, that's an issue. You can't just, take it to recycling. You got to take it and dispose of it
Sure.
in a proper manner.
Sure.
So there is that issue.
Yeah, like everything. So many other electronics that we purchase, right? They all have the same issue.
All right, got any more questions on the floor? Nancy, I want to really thank you so much
you're very
for
welcome.
coming and
Of applications, if people are curious.
yeah, we could leave us a couple. I know Nick has delved in, looked at them already, and et cetera. Next steps. What are we do we need to be addressing some of what would we need to do by asking Nick to do some background work for us, or do we need some ordinance reviews? Or-
I can speak to that, I think, at least broadly at this point. What I had, as I looked into it and participated in both the webinar and the meeting that we had with the county, I had boiled it down to 3 preliminary steps, with one of those steps being kind of 2 prongs to it. So one is the comprehensive plan updates. We're going through that process right now. I think there's a real opportunity, both from a points perspective, as I looked at what that point breakdown is, there's a couple that we can tie into a comprehensive plan update, but also from the survey perspective. If you want to see what the public's receptiveness or wants are here, we have an opportunity. We're putting together, as part of the public participation plan, a survey. And we can build in questions that get to this and see what the public's desire is for the town to pursue this. So I think we really have an opportunity there. The second consideration would be that solar statement. It's required no matter what we are. If we're bronze, silver, or gold, you have to have a solar statement. That was what she was referencing as far as this statement that is posted on the website that talks about our goals. That's a requirement. It would go to the town board to adopt that. We drafted and it would get adopted by the town board and then ultimately published on the website. And then the one that I talked about as 2-pronged, that would be reviewing the zoning ordinance and looking at our permitting. Now, I took notes from the presentation here today that there's some opportunities to look to both the city of Wisconsin Rapids and Wood County for what they're doing with permitting. So I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel by any means there. The zoning ordinance, I have started to dig into our zoning ordinance, and over a few meetings with the Plan Commission, I think we could start to look at all the different solar options and where we want to limit it, what we want to require. Is it just going to be permitted use? Is it going to be a conditional use? Is it just going to not be allowed in certain districts? For example, medium and large scale in residential, maybe not, but that would, I could see that process going through the Plan Commission and then ultimately being a recommendation to the legislative committee. Also with that permitting, I think it would involve the building inspector, get his input as far as what would be involved with his inspections on solar, and make sure that we're not causing any problems in that regard. So.
Yeah, I think it would be important for him to watch those webinars, Peggy, right? Probably?
Probably.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Bill?
Through your clerk's network, can you see how many towns or contacted towns, see how many towns are doing this or talking about this? Sure. Because I really think they have to be involved in annexation and extraterritorial zoning.
I don't disagree with you at all, Bill, but you know, that the Towns Association needs to be involved in acknowledging what is going on with the industry. They should be up front and looking for what's the best way for them. The issue of annexations, we always have that no matter what, but I wouldn't be thinking that they would want to annex our dump from us. You know what I mean? Tom?
Are you going to be narrow focused to solar, or are you going to keep focused to renewable? Because if we just do solar, and all of a sudden we got water, we got wind, should this not be a broad, so we don't have to come back in X amount of years and say, well, now we got to add this for wind, now we got to add this, or should this just be a renewable energy type of concept?
Good point.
Well, I mean, I was thinking there's going to be a couple types of solar. I mean, I think this is more towards solar electric, but I mean, do you really need to look at solar hot water? Is that, I mean, I know there's one kind of homemade one that you see.
There's a few of those around.
You know, I don't know if that's a concern or not. I guess that's an open question, but.
Well, I guess that's something that if we take the go ahead and get started on it, we'll let Plan Commission run first into this and see where you guys go. I believe, as Bill said, it's probably the right thing. We should be doing it. You know, I would have my own reservations with a lot of big wind towers up above us humming all day long too, just like anybody else would. But I would expect if anybody was going to do anything like that, they need to have a large piece of land. And unfortunately, there's not that many large pieces of land in Grand Rapids that haven't been subdivided yet. So.
And admittedly, I looked at this from the Soul Smart requirements, so it is an option, and it can be a discussion. And again, with the community survey and the comp plan updates, I think it could be addressed there too.
If we went with renewable energy, period, that would save us things further down the road as a possibility to have more meetings on concepts or aspects.
Nancy, did you have any more comments?
I did have something related to the wind, so I asked about feasibility of wind in Wood County, and at this time with the current technology, it's not terribly feasible. It is up in Marathon County. They have more topography and higher landscapes. It may change as technologies change, but right now we're too low and flat, and we're not a good site for that. That's not to say an individual might not step up and want to install one anyway.
We did them around 30 years ago.
Yeah.
48 and 54.
Yeah. Making water for the cows, huh?
The windmill you had, and it was
Yeah.
DC power.
All right, then I guess the consensus is we'll probably have Nick keep working on this and get something with you guys on your agenda and start looking into this, and we'll see where it ultimately plays out.
Do you want that just to be at this point housed with the plan commission, or do you want me to also be working on the solar statement and send that to Lisa? Again, that piece goes to the town board.
You know, can we make any type of motion to that effect this evening? I don't.
Just give me, I just need
I don't
direction.
know that we can make a motion
Yeah,
to actually do that.
I don't think you need to do a motion. I just
Yeah.
need direction so I can prepare the right.
Yeah, I think, you know, we taking a stab in the dark, we should keep moving forward on it. I think that's the process that we do until we get some answers. There are some things that have came up that I'm gonna see if I can get involved with, see if find some answers from PFC and see what they've got to say also. Anything else on that? If not, we'll shut this meeting down. We've got a couple of outstanding items that we need to catch up on, and one of them is our operator licenses, and then we need to have you guys stick around for a minute to the second piece here. This is the one that I wanted. Okay. All right, operator license application, Lisa will go through the list if we would.
I offered, unfortunately.
You offered.
All right, so we have, for 1 year, Brenda Vella, Amy Bodette, Jennifer Carlson, Michelle Derry, Mary Bill, Gary Fluger, Autumn Fear, Lori Galetka, Jacqueline Gilbertson, Ronald Gutschall, Rachel Hahn, Trista Hoff, Shane Kang, Katie Livernash, Macy Mansell, Joel Millard, Autumn Munro, Dawn Munro, Jacob Mush, Emily Ninneman, Tara Olson, Jordan Seiler, Mary Skifton, Scott Stainbrook, Vanessa Walensky, and Sally Young. 2 year, we have Marcy Berlin, Kelly Hyman, Kurt Hyman, Lynn Kazuski, Tanya Wayan. Temporary, Barb Bushmaker, Pete Bushmaker, Vaughn Kubishak, Kara Sleater, and then one denial for Bridget Olson.
I'll make a motion to approve the list.
Motion by Bill, second by Andrew.
With the denial.
With denial. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Having none, any opposed? No opposed. All right, consider possible action on public participation plan for the town's comprehensive plan update. You've got that document in front of you, I believe. And for my information, was this something that was drafted through the Plan Commission?
It
Correct?
was, Arnie, yes. And so the Plan Commission has vetted this document and prepared it as you see it today, and then it does need to be adopted by the governing body of the municipality per state statute.
The only question that I have is pertaining to the survey process. Was that paper mail out? Was that what I read, or was that online, or what was the option that you had? Was it both?
I don't quite understand.
I think it was mostly,
How was the survey going to get out to the public?
Oh,
I think mostly paper mailing, but we
Yes.
did leave open an option potentially for an online if there was something that became available that would meet the, I guess, security needs.
Okay, well,
Just so we know that
okay.
people are residents
Yeah.
and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Name of their dog, huh, or something?
Right, right.
So then the second piece to that, is that survey then going to be done this year yet, or is that in next year's?
well, we're actually starting to work on the questions. I think what's coming up for our next agenda, Peg, or maybe after that, we're going to start looking at questions that we want to have on that survey. And so from that point, we're envisioning that we'll bring that to the town board for review, just to ensure that
Okay.
the questions are.
At that point in time, do we need to see, I don't remember, quite frankly, if we left money in our current budget for that, or if that did not get,
For the survey?
Right.
We did not, because we got the estimate.
so then we're going to have to look at a source to
I think at
designate.
budget time, didn't you say if it was going to come up this year, we would find the money for that?
Well, if we did, we still need to officially do that.
No, I see that, no, I'm just saying, I understand that you go through the process.
All I'm saying is I was correct in my thinking that for some reason basically I think well, whatever our reason was, we didn't that this year, but
Okay.
if it is going to go, then we'll find funds for it.
I mean, unless we have a couple meetings a month, I think 6 months might be a little quick anyhow to get something mailed out. Just spitballing here, I'm not certain. I've never done it before, but I'm just saying
Oh, okay.
that, I mean,
Cutting it close.
you know,
Okay. Well, we'll ask for the budget to be considered when we're finalized with that. How's that?
So when that bridge is ready to cross.
Right, we will make sure that the town board's involved.
Okay.
So the county's not gonna chip in on this?
he's not here, so sure, why not? So you
All
can.
right, any board members' questions, or a motion, I
I'll
guess?
make a motion that we approve the public action or public participation plan for the comprehensive plan.
I'll second.
Motion Andrew, second Patty. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Have an aye, any opposed? No opposed. Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, motion.
Andrew,
Patty?
Patty, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I want to thank the Plan Commission for your efforts and your attendance. It's a very important piece. And
Yeah.